Folks, welcome back to Sector 7. If this is your first time here, I want to welcome you. I do appreciate your patronage. Today, we are going to go over what is my most comprehensive equipment layout yet. We're going to talk about summer considerations in a humid subtropical southeastern environment. All right, but let me get comfortable first. I feel kind of goofy standing here in a tiger stripe boonie. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to skip all of the kind of pomp and circumstance today. We're going to skip the fancy intro, all of that. And instead, I'm going to take the time to go over a couple of thoughts that I've been having recently. If this is your introduction to equipment, if this is the first thing that you're looking into in the preparedness space, you are looking at it from a very top-down approach, because this is in the context of open warfare in the southeastern United States. Now, what is the likelihood of that actually happening? It's almost zero. Foreign invasion or government overreach, FEMA camps, concentration camps, genocide, all of those things are so remote in terms of possibility that they almost don't even bear mentioning. However, I feel like it is an integral part of the American culture to cultivate riflemen within our own people, not only to stand as a long-lasting deterrent against tyranny and foreign invasion, but also to enhance our operational readiness in outside environments. The humid subtropics do not just extend to the southeastern United States. Large sections of the world fall under that category, from the majority of China, Taiwan, Japan, portions of Africa, portions of South America, portions of the Middle East and Europe all fall under a humid subtropical environment. So with these hot weather considerations at hand, they can apply to multiple different locations and multiple different situations. Now, with that being said, we are going to forego some of the basic survival aspects, okay? So stuff like your little hatchets and your cool fixed blade knives, stuff like that, that is not going to be a focus of this video. This is not a survival focused video. This is combat centric, under the assumption that you are attempting to exert force in order to influence your area of operations. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to start with what I consider to be kind of the coolest part. And we're going to start with our weaponry considerations. So briefly, when it comes to the right tool for the job, one of the points that I want to hammer down is that it does not matter quite as much as some people would think. Whether you've got a cool pimped out Geisley with LPVO and laser, all that cool stuff, suppressors, all that stuff, or whether you've got a basic, something like this, an M16 with an ACOG. This is a shorty M16, so this is actually only an 18-inch Centurion barrel, but M16 type build with an ACOG, a bipod. You know, the only thing I would probably slap on here would be a light, or all the way down to your most basic rifleman implement, something like my Block 2 equipped with a red dot and a light, right? Picking the right tool for the job is fairly simple. I suggest looking over what your plan is, whether you're going to be in a basic rifleman role, whether you're going to be in a leadership role, a reconnaissance role, etc., and kind of going off that. For this particular video, I would most likely choose my Geisley. Now, before anybody comes after me in the comments, I wanted to address this. Sometimes I get people trying to urge me to paint my rifle, like my clone type rifles like this. Just know I do suggest keeping some cans of Rust-Oleum camo paint in a temperature controlled environment so that if the shit goes down, you can just paint your rifle up, have it be all, you know, glamorously camouflaged, everything like that. I did not forget how to camouflage a rifle, but I do happen to think that this Block 2 looks better with the two-tone thing going on. But in this particular context, most likely would be rolling with the Geisley with an LPVO. Now, in terms of this basic setup, I'm going to go over it as quickly as I can. We've got some signature reduction items going on here. We have a painted rifle, painted, it's already FDE, but we've gone ahead and broken it up a little bit. We have the ability to fight in the dark with a full power PEC 15, and we've got our typical lens covers and stuff like that. We've got our 100 concept scope cap here. We've got our Predator lens cover right here. That's in order to lower the amount of shine and something like a near peer environment. Back during the GWAT, we didn't have to worry about that quite as much. We were projecting force out in the open. We were almost inviting the enemy to attempt to engage us in most situations. And we didn't have to have those near peer considerations quite as much. But reducing your signature would certainly be important in a domestic environment. Another cool thing about the 100 concept scope cap is that with the bend and aiming concept, which you can apply to a good LPVO like the Razor that has a very strong 1X capability, you can keep this on during torrential downpour or super humid, foggy environments. So if your optic is getting occluded by those environmental considerations, you can put on this scope cap and you can shoot occluded with this scope cap on using the bend and aiming concept. So just little considerations like that, having your scope covers can definitely be beneficial. You can see that I still have mine on the T2 as well. So that's going to conclude our weaponry considerations. So like I mentioned, a lot of people in the preparedness space have kind of a top-down approach to their preparedness. What I suggest doing before you jump into replicating an infantryman is making sure that your EDC is dialed in, your general emergency planning, all of those, you know, your food prep, stuff like that is all squared away before you start getting into this. Now, this is not the end of the road. There are ways that I can improve my kit. There's always ways to drive yourself deeper and deeper into debt so that you can chase that dragon of having the perfect kit. However, from a light infantryman's perspective, this is what I have and this is what I'd roll with. So speaking of that top-down approach, we're going to start from bottom up, and that's going to be footwear. So when it comes to our footwear, we've got a couple basic options here. Now, you'll be able to tell pretty quickly I am a big Solomon guy right out of the gate. In my particular environment, you know, not all of the Southeast is created equal, literally. My particular environment is characterized by a large amount of water. There is the potential for water crossings in terms of rivers, streams, marshes, swamps, etc. So when it comes to a hot weather environment, we're going to lean a little bit less on the Gore-Tex, and we're going to lean into something like a quick drying option like a jungle boot. Now, this is a 511 jungle boot, and I want to caveat this by saying I generally do not recommend anything from 511, but this was actually a hit. So I've had this boot for a couple years. It's got your standard drain grommets. It's a quick drying boot, got really great tread on it, super lightweight, very durable boot for 511 for sure. This is what I would choose over something like your Gore-Tex. When it comes to Gore-Tex, once you go over the ankle and water fully ingresses into that Gore-Tex, you're just going to be swimming all day. It's not going to dry, and eventually you're going to get jungle rot. You know, you're going to go ahead and give yourself some trench foot. And we don't want to get immersion in a non-permissive southeastern environment, because the last thing that we want is to be stuck out there in the middle of the mountains, in the middle of the marshes, with the skin of our feet sloughing off and getting infected and killing us. So I would suggest the jungle boot in my particular environment. However, up in the mountains of Appalachia, it could be a little bit different. Gore-Tex could serve you well in multiple different environments. Right here, we've got our Salomon XA Forces. I've had these for several years. They're starting to fall apart. And just over the last couple years, I've progressed from wearing shoes until they fall apart to trying to wear them on a mileage schedule. So with this, I do have about 2,000 miles on this set of boots because I just didn't want to get rid of them. But I do have to, unfortunately, retire them. I suggest rotating your footwear on about a 500-mile mileage schedule in order to preserve the soles, the cushioning, everything like that. Keep the shock absorption in the boot so that you don't do long-lasting damage to your body. But Salomon XA Forces, if you're looking for a super legit mid Gore-Tex, and there's also non-Gore-Tex versions. And then right here, we've got the replacement, which is the Salomon Quest 4Ds. I'm still getting used to these. They're pretty well broken in at this point. A little bit lighter than the XA Forces, but they've got a little bit more ankle support, come up a little bit higher, and I've been a huge fan of them. Now, as mentioned in my last video, for my particular environment, any super wet, super humid, super parasite-filled environment, when it comes to things like snakes, ticks, chiggers, etc., you can't go wrong with having a good pair of leg gaiters as well. These are the Outdoor Research. Do your research, find out which one you like. I like the Outdoor Research version. So that's going to conclude our footwear. Because this is going to be quite a long video, some of these things might seem like I'm kind of driving by them. I want to preserve your time as much as possible while being as comprehensive as possible. Nothing bothers me more than those guys that put out 30-minute videos every week about some innocuous bullshit like footwear when, you know, it should take 5 minutes to explain basic footwear to people. Now, depending on what you're doing is going to heavily influence what pair of pants I would recommend. Here, we've got our field pant, we've got our combat pant, and we've got kind of a hybrid between the two. If you're operating in a woodland environment and you are operating at basic rifleman tasks, you can't go wrong with a good, affordable pair of field pants. We've got, I believe we've got Roscoe right here in M81, and we've got my True Spec right here in Tiger Stripe. Now, quick aside, speaking of Tiger Stripe, talk about camo selection real quick, camouflage selection. I've had people give me feedback on the fact that I like multicam. Why are you wearing fed cam? There's better camouflages for your environment, etc. And that may be the case. I just want to dial in the point that it's better to have, if you can only have one camouflage pattern, it's better to have a pattern that works acceptably in all environments than a pattern that excels in just one environment and then has extreme weaknesses elsewhere. This is why we went through extensive testing back in 2009 through 2011 and came to the conclusion that multicam was the best multi-spectrum camouflage option out there. That being said, if you have the budget for it, go wild. All right, get yourself some Tiger Stripe, get yourself some M81, etc. But back to the field pant. Field pant's going to be very affordable. It's not going to catch on as many things. It's not going to be as heavy. It's going to be a little bit lighter weight and easier for you to deal with in a hot weather environment. So if you're dealing with hot weather, woodland environment, definitely could recommend a field pant as a general option. Now we'll go into the combat pant. This right here is going to be your Russian A&A Tactical Combat Pant. It is pretty much a Cry AC or G2 knockoff, right? Ranger green, you can't go wrong with some Ranger green in this environment. I don't really like to flex these into a woodland roll unless I have to. Having stuff like the integrated knees, the 4-way stretch material, you know, the extra pockets, everything like that, the ability to adjust, you know, height and behind the knee, these are all well and dandy, but ultimately I have found these to be a little bit overbuilt for a woodland environment. And in terms of the knees, you can say all day, you know, tuck the knee pads behind the fabric and close it up with the Velcro. Eventually that Velcro is going to soften up. All right, as this gets wet and dries over and over again, as it rubs onto more materials and catches more materials, everything like that, it's going to become less and less secure, and you are still going to get these little edges caught on things like thistles and brambles. Whereas with a field pant, you don't have to worry about that. And just for honorable mention, all right, we've got our little Gucci right here as well. We've got our Cry, our dry fire Cries. These are G3 cut M81s. Big fan of them, especially when I want to, you know, flex on the pores and look like an operator. But ultimately, I would reserve these for mostly either an arid environment, arid like desert. You're not going through as many different woodland type obstacles that can get in your way, or a CQB environment. But if you got the money for Cry, I mean, go crazy, all right? Who am I to tell you what to do with your money? Then we've got my favorite kind of pant right here. These are both Beyond clothing. So we've got my M81, we've got my multicam, and I'm wearing Ranger green right now. I actually have the full spectrum of Beyond clothing combat pants. This is the A9 Utility. It's characterized by the lack of stretch material because it doesn't really need it with the type of cut that it has. So it doesn't have quite as many quality of life options. It doesn't have vertical knee pad adjustment either. The knees are just kind of, they fall where they fall. But one of the things I really like about hybrid type pants like this is that you can keep the knee pads internal. They're designed to be internal, so you can still get that benefit of knees without having to worry about them catching on things. Now, that being said, at certain times during the dog days of summer, I'm probably not even going to roll with knee pads. They get so hot, you get so sweaty and swampy in your leg area, it becomes uncomfortable. My multicam set right here is the A9 Advanced, which you could almost call like a Cry G3, but with internal knees. All right, it's got the vertical adjustments. It's got 4-way stretch material. I believe 4-way stretch material. It might be 2-way stretch material, but it's got the stretch material behind the knees. Lots of different cool little quality of life options. Fantastic pant. And then the Ranger green pants I'm wearing right now are the A9 Tacticals. Get into field shirts versus combat shirts. And first, let me go ahead and doff this chest rig. All right, so getting into field versus combat shirt. Quick anecdote, I was there when combat shirts first came out, and we were thrilled, let me tell you, to get something that was lightweight, really breathable, more comfortable underneath plate carriers. And I have photo examples of from the beginning of the deployment to the end of the deployment in Afghanistan, where we went from everybody wearing combat shirts to the vast majority of us wearing field shirts. Combat shirts have a tendency to retain salt and retain dirt. They do not protect you as well from the environment. Things like thistles and nettles can get right through this t-shirt type cloth material. They are a short-term use option that I would reserve almost exclusively for plate carrier use. So right here we've got our G3 in M81, and then we've got our little UF Pro. Quick caveat about the UF Pro, so they make their stuff in a jersey material, a lot like the Velocity Systems Rugby. They don't have Ranger Green as a colorway, so if you were to compare my Ranger green pants to theirs, their brown gray, it can kind of pass at a distance until you put the two together. It drives me crazy. So these would go well with like a different, either a matching pant or like M81 pants, something like that, but they do not blend well with Ranger green. But UF Pro, awesome option as well if you choose to do a combat shirt. Personally, for me, my favorite type of shirt is going to be a raid modded BDU shirt. It could be an ACU cut, it can be a field cut. Cry fields are awesome too. I have a couple of those. These are raid modded BDUs from Grand Pops Army Navy. I would suggest a field shirt, and I would suggest sanitizing it of any of your cool hype beast, you know, cool guy skull patches and stuff, so that you are putting out as low of a signature as possible. But I like a field shirt. And then Plat Attack boonie right here and True Spec boonie right here. The Plat Attack boonie comes with some cool little implements, like it's got this high vis panel on the inside with some super breathable mesh material as well. Pretty cool. And then True Spec is just like any True Spec. It's got no frills. It is a basic option out there. I suggest having a boonie or some form of field cap, some form of ball cap to protect your head and camouflage your head a little bit. We're going to go deeper into signature reduction and camouflage considerations in the future. Just understand that from this context, when you're rolling with a squad or platoon-sized element of guys, you do want to camouflage as much as possible, but there's kind of a balance to be made between mobility and signature reduction, right? So we want to stay mobile. We want to be able to cover long distances. We don't want to overheat. Bear in mind that in a southern summer environment, the heat is so oppressive that the majority of combat operations, or at least the majority of movement that you're going to be conducting, is going to be at night. I can just see it right now. Some Bubba is going to come in the comments. He's going to be like, oh, well, I hope they don't mind getting shot by thermals, something like that. No, understand that in a heavily vegetated woodland environment, during the dog days of summer, late at night, it's a lot easier to avoid avenues of approach, avoid natural lines of drift, which are, natural lines of drifts are things like game trails, logging trails, things that you could naturally see people gravitating to in order to expedite their movement. So avoiding things like natural lines of drift or game trails is going to massively help when it comes to traversing long distance environments. So not only are you lowering your overall footprint by moving through the dark, you're also preserving the health of your guys by getting out of that heat, getting out of that direct sunlight. All right. And then bear in mind that in terms of combat operations, the best time to conduct combat operations is during the most miserable conditions. Think of it from the perspective of an underpaid Army private. They want to get their job over and done with, right? When they are on night watch and they're on rotating 6-hour guard shifts and they're still using old school GWAT era past 13 thermals or what have you to go ahead and protect their patrol base, protect their combat outpost, their FOB, their forward operating base, anything like that, their sphere of influence is very limited to, at the most, a couple of kilometers within that particular area. That's about as far as their sphere of influence is going to extend. So by using, and it doesn't have to be a US Army, it could be Russian Army, whatever. Pretty much military is created equal across the world, right? They're tired, they're worn out, they've been working all day, they just want to go to sleep, they're dreaming about going back home to Mary Sue, right? They're not going to sit there and go through extensive, painful efforts to go deep into the boonies and see where people might be moving through the woodland, except in certain limited circumstances, right? So in environments that are very active, kinetically active. Say there's been ambushes going on in this area. There's been enemy, there's been movement spotted in this area frequently. There have been improvised explosive devices or mines detected in this area. Those areas are going to draw a lot more attention, obviously, than areas that seem innocuous and peaceful, right? So you're going to want to kind of plan your movement considerations off of that. But this isn't a video to talk about tactics. We're talking about equipment. And if you ever ask me why I don't spend more time talking about tactics, is because there's people out there who are more qualified, are better able to articulate tactics than I am. And ultimately, the fundamentals of light infantry tactics, if you have the fundamentals down to a non-commissioned officer level, as an example, then you can start focusing on other things like setting your equipment up and how you can optimize things, right? So I love equipment. That is my purview. My purview is light infantry operations, light infantry equipment, and the general LARPiness that surrounds doing that as a now civilian. So that's what I'm going to focus on. All right, so next we're going to talk about whether or not you would need a war belt in this kind of environment. Well, that depends. So if it is a short duration mission, if it includes working around structures, if it includes working with vehicles, most likely I am going to opt for some kind of battle belt. I want to be able to have access to things like my sidearm, like my extra medical equipment, quick access to magazines. It's just my little Batman belt, and I love to have it. However, if it's going to be something like a long-range patrol through a woodland environment in hot weather, probably going to opt to avoid the belt. The best way I can simplify it is that anything that's going to require a plate carrier, like my Cry AVS here, is probably going to also have a belt included. Another reason too is that if I'm carrying a plate carrier, I'm probably not carrying quite as much on my back, quite as much in terms of sustainment and stuff like that. So I want to be able to load some of those tools onto my belt system, like my multi-tool right here. All right. And again, if you're somebody who doesn't roll around with a multi-tool on your kit, that is a grave mistake that can get you killed in the heat of a firefight. And I've got a quick anecdote about that I'll be sharing in a couple minutes. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to transition to the chest rig system that I would choose for this environment, and then round everything off and finalize with my sustainment pack. So right here, we've got our chest rig. Now, in my last video, I covered a belt rig. There's multiple different ways to skin a cat, okay? You can roll with a belt rig, you can roll with a chest rig. I will say that the belt rig idea is more of an idea that I've been toying with, whereas the chest rig is something I'm a lot more comfortable with and have spent a lot more time with. However, just pick your poison. As long as you can carry the mission essential items that you need, that is going to be sufficient. In this case, we've got a T-Rex Arms chest rig, and I've been running this rig since the day that they came out, so maybe about a year or so. I've taken it to multiple events. I've trained with it extensively. I've walked many miles with this rig on, and it's kind of settled into becoming my favorite rig, especially for the price, because of a couple of the features that I'll briefly go over. So on the sides, you're able to fit any sort of sustainment pouch, general purpose pouch that's 3 PALS webbing lengths wide, right? So Cry, Spiritus, T-Rex Arms, almost everybody makes them 3 wide in terms of width. The VA is actually calling me right now on my phone. That is a easy segue. So 3 rows wide in terms of MOLLE webbing. There's other rigs out there like the Onward Research Recce rig that are only 2 wide. That's not sufficient for my purposes. I know I've seen Grantham mention before that he spends a lot of time in a ruck, and he felt like too wide is going to be better because it makes a ruck fit a little better. And no hate on Grantham. He's the man that many of us wish we could be. A little bit of penis envy there. But that being said, he's not a light infantryman. I hate to say it, but you know, he's an Air Force guy. Credit where credit's due, but when it comes to light infantry operations, I do suggest having the ability to carry something like your night vision on you and then carry your general purpose. Before we get into the actual layout of the pouches, I'll finish talking about the T-Rex Arms rig itself. So it's got integrated radio pouches in the back so that you can fit all the way up to a Prick 152, but they're optimized for Motorola's talkabout radios, Baofeng, stuff like that. Just keep in mind they can actually fit larger radios as well when you're using the bungee retention. And then something like a quick access tourniquet as well. I like to keep multiple redundancies for quick access tourniquets on my body. The T-Rex Arms rig also comes with a very generous admin panel on the inside that you can set up, and I'll go over the contents of that admin panel soon. I've chosen to use T-Rex's elastic back strap because it's an awesome strap, and in this case I've optimized the rig with my own H strap. So I've been using the Mayflower H strap for several years, and it's just something that I've settled into. I want to explore some straps that can handle an EUD bridge a little better. EUD stands for end user device, like this cell phone mount right here. And I'm using the Haley Strategic bridge right here. It sits a little high for my liking. I'd like to bring it maybe an inch or two lower, which this Mayflower H strap will not accommodate. Then going down from top to bottom, we've got our standard Comtac PTT that can integrate with my Peltors, and then the actual end user device from Juggernaut with my Galaxy phone. Would I want to use this in a non-permissive kind of Civil War, end of the world as we know it environment? Quite possibly not. If we have capability overmatch with our foes, I'm talking numbers, I'm talking technological superiority, might opt to use different options like cell phones and GPSs in that case. But if we are fighting a superior foe, they can track you with your phone off. You know, they have ways of triangulating your position. There are multiple different anecdotes of people in Ukraine having their Bluetooth networks get compromised and having artillery land on their position. So I'd probably opt not to have the EUD case with the cool guy black and white patch on the front, and that's why we carry redundancies, right? So as cool as it is to have stuff like ATAC and have GPS maps loaded onto your phone and everything, just figure out how that could potentially compromise your situation. From a civilian perspective though, it is a cool little force multiplier and it looks sweet. And looking sweet is half the battle here. One of the things to keep in mind about your chest rig or your fighting load is that it is meant to aid you in conducting operations against enemy forces. This is not a survival rig. This is a rig that's meant to facilitate your ability to accomplish a mission. In this case, the mission would be anywhere between 24 to 72 hours, ideally. You need to be able to carry sufficient ammunition. You need to be able to carry the navigation that you need, the communication equipment that you need, and the signals equipment that you need, as well as medical equipment. In this case, we carry 8 magazines, something that I really like about the T-Rex rig. I recently saw an admin results video where he had a Marine infantryman come on, and that infantryman said, "You don't need to carry 12 magazines on you," while he was going over kind of priorities of kit. You may not need to carry 12 magazines on you, that's true, but as someone who has been in a number of close ambushes, you will expend ammunition at an astronomical rate, almost regardless of your level of training, in order to gain fire superiority on the enemy. So I actually carry specifically 12 magazines. And I'd like to roll in a picture of me in Afghanistan. My leadership opted to give me no signaling equipment when I carried the M203. Our goal was to give ourselves as much firepower as possible. So I carried 12 IED grenades on me and 10 magazines on my kit in person, and then anywhere between 2 to 4 additional magazines in my assault pack in the truck in order to go ahead and load those back into my kit should I need it. It all depends on what you're doing, where you're going, and who you're fighting, right? For me, in this context, 8 magazines on the person, 1 in the gun brings us to 9 magazines with an additional 4 in my sustainment kit to bring me up to a grand total of 13. Now we'll talk about our signals pouch. Contained in the T-Rex Arms pouch, we're gonna have a quick little frog balaclava, marine fire retardant balaclava. That's if you don't have the time to put on face paint, or your face paint has washed off from the excessive amount of sweating you've been doing, but you need to conduct operations that require you to conceal your identity. You know, bear in mind, there's AI out there that can algorithmically curate who you are and build target packages based on that information. And we see it going on in Israel right now, where people are getting F-16 strikes on their house because of AI algorithms identifying them as potential Hamas, which is insane. So concealing your identity is going to be very important in any sort of context. But beneath that, we've got some of our signaling and break contact options. Are smoke grenades necessary for everybody? No. Generally, in a standard infantryman layout, smoke grenades are going to be reserved for people in junior leadership and up positions. If you're a Minuteman type and you want to extend that kind of responsibility to all of your guys, you can do so. Just make sure that you have some sort of standard operating procedure surrounding that. And then on the top, we've got some chem lights. All right, we've got a whole row of chem lights in the top of this pouch right here. You know, different operating procedures regarding those. Like for instance, one thing that you can do to put chem lights to use is after you assault an objective, you have a follow-on team that has to come in and search all of the bodies that are left on that objective. You can crack one of these chem lights if it's nighttime and put them on the body or in their mouths. And then when the sensitive site exploitation team or the EPW team, enemy prisoner of war team, comes through, searches those bodies, they can remove those chem lights as they search them to give a visual indicator that they've been searched. Then right here, we've got our camo compact, and we've got our mirror that we use to apply our camouflage and can also be used for emergency signal purposes, as well as a small lighter to not only light fires, but also soften up our camo in cold weather environments. The camo compact will become rock hard and you need to soften it up with some sort of heat. Moving over to the other pouch. It highly depends on kind of what we're doing. In most cases though, I really do want to carry my night vision on the body. I've kind of flip-flopped on this stance over time, but I've settled in with the other more professional people in that it is best to opt to have it on you. You don't know when you're going to get separated from your bag and need to have that night vision option. So we've got our Cry SSE bag, right? So this is for all my Age of Empires villagers who want to gather berries. And we've got our night vision in here tethered into the Spiritus pouch. The Spiritus pouch comes with internal tethers that will allow you to retain your night vision or any of your sensitive items. So I like to have the Spiritus pouch. And then in front, we've got our headlamp, right? This is one of the Petzls that starts with red, and when you hold it down, it goes into white light. And we've got our main lensatic compass. And then just in case, you never know. I've been carrying this with me for years, if I could just dig it out. My little ferro rod. Now, like I said, this is not a kit made for survival. I want to minimize the amount of weight that I'm implementing in this kit for that role. I want to focus on more combat-centric options, but a little ferro rod that weighs like 1 or 2 ounces and could potentially save your life if you get into some sort of sear situation, not too bad of an option. Contained within our admin panel, this is where I really kind of like the T-Rex Arms rig, because the admin panel is such a great addition. So we've got a roll of tape. This roll of tape would go on my war belt if I was running a war belt. It would hang from a little attachment piece that I've got right on the front of the belt. But in the case of running a chest rig, it'll go inside the admin panel. And then we've got our protractors. So we've got one protractor for mapping, and then Black Hills Designs makes a really cool product that is a range estimation protractor, and you hold it out from your mouth, you hold it in your teeth, and you can actually hold up this protractor, and depending on the height of the man, you can correlate his height and how it lines up with this at different distances to do range estimation if you don't have something like a laser rangefinder or a calculator with a mil-dot reticle, or MOA, but a calculator and the ability to manually calculate their range. This also achieves the same thing. One of these is a ballistic drop compensator, and one of them is a ranging tool. The ballistic drop compensator is a little bit harder for me to wrap my mind around, but it is really cool. Black Hills Designs makes that. And then we've got my map of the AO, my main area of operations. Make sure you get waterproof maps. You can laminate them. This one came waterproof. I ordered it waterproof, and it has retained through several years of use. Self-laminating maps can make them kind of stiff and crinkly and more difficult to get into places. So just keep that in mind. Make sure it's waterproof. A VS17 panel. I've had people say, what do you need a VS17 panel to signal aircraft with in a, Minuteman environment? Well, just keep in mind, I really hope that your plan is not to topple an entire government with just AR-15s, right? Like, you're gonna need additional intervention if you're fighting a capability overmatched foe, right? In this context, we would most likely have some form of air support available to us. This also applies to our military members who are out there. Even though you will be told the standard operating procedure for what kind of equipment you need to carry, hopefully you can take some ideas from this and kind of build off those. Because when I was a brand new private, I would have loved to have had access to a lot of this stuff back in the day. They just didn't make it. All right, so we've got our map markers right here and some Sharpies as well. And then we've got our Right in the Rain notebook, and we've got our mechanical Right in the Rain pencil as well. All right, because you don't want to write in your Right in the Rain notebook with a pen and have it bleed through the whole thing. I still have one of my old Right in the Rains from my recon days, and it's bled through half of the pages, and it's just a disgusting mess. But I hold on to it for nostalgia's sake. And then right here behind, we've got our medical shears, and those just jam right in between the pouch. And then on the bottom of the rig, we've got ourselves a Spiritus fanny with a very well-stocked IFAC first aid kit, some decontamination stuff, some wet wipes, and an extra tourniquet right there. So 2 tourniquets right from the get-go. So now we'll go ahead and we'll transition over to our sustainment load. Blah! All right, so sustainment load. Now, this is supposed to get us through anything from a 24-hour mission to a 72-hour mission, under the assumption that if we're doing something that's a shorter duration, I'm still going to take the pack with me, leave it in a safe location, and downscale from there into what I absolutely need for a short duration, like 8 to 12 hour mission. First thing we'll do is we'll unclip our helmet. Now, in most cases, I'm gonna be wearing a helmet on patrol. Sometimes it's so hot, it's so miserable out, you pretty much have to wear a hat or you're gonna overheat. But in most cases, I'm gonna wear a helmet. One quick point I wanna make is that you can do the scrim on the helmets, you can spray paint your helmets, everything like that. I'm still warming up to the whole scrim everything idea that's kind of becoming in vogue these days. But one thing that you can do too is you can use camo paint, face paint, and you can spread it over any sort of shiny or bright gear that you have to go ahead and darken that up a little bit to help blend into your environment a little bit better. And then again, sanitize all your hype beast patches so that you are not shot for having some black and white patches. So eye protection, you have to have it. It fogs up, it can get uncomfortable, it can create pressure points on your temples, it can be super annoying. However, it's a lot more annoying to have a sharp holly leaf stab you in the eyeball because you're walking through the woods at night and you didn't see it because your night vision messed with your depth perception. Ask me how I know. I was injured for several weeks because of that. So if you can opt to figure out a way to always have eye protection, do so. Now, because I have kind of maxed out this 30-liter pack, I have to carry it externally and have it strapped down. That's not ideal. Having it contained inside your pack is definitely more ideal, but when you have to work with what you've got, sometimes you need to come up with some solutions. In my previous, one of my previous videos, I mentioned how I like to have a weapon retention lanyard to help retain my helmet. It also helps with retaining additional other pieces of equipment, like my water bottles in this case, and my pack cover. So you will notice that this Mystery Ranch 2-day assault pack is in kind of this ugly forest green colorway. Things went down, I'd probably spray paint this a good bit and kind of break it up, but also having this multicam pack cover can help protect it from the elements and help camouflage it as well. So I'll carry that on me. And then an ample amount of water. So here today, we would be carrying about 5 liters of water for 2 days. And I like to carry as much water on the body as possible. That way you don't have to resort to water purification methods, but we do have those in the pack if need be. One thing I want to address early is, what are all these things on the outside of the pack? Well, these are zip cuffs, and this kind of leads me into a quick spiel. It's very difficult to fight a war morally. And in order to lessen your chances of conducting immoral actions, sometimes you have to hurt some people's feelings, right? So say you need to occupy a building that's owned by local populace, and these people can't know your identity and you don't want to physically harm them. There are methods for separating them and keeping them under watch while you guys conduct operations in that building that require cuffing them and putting some sandbags on their head for a little while so that you can conceal your identity and the nature of your operations for long enough. Once you get out of there, you know, let them go back to doing their thing. They're not going to like it, but it's a lot better than the alternative. So I have things separated here at the top of the pack between kind of tool items and sustainment items right underneath. So carrying a handheld flashlight, I just believe that everybody should have some kind of handheld flashlight, whether it be searching for sensitive items that your buddy has lost, or identifying people in a peaceful manner without aiming a weapon at them, or searching an objective after you have conducted actions on the objective and you're no longer super worried about noise light discipline. Having a nice handheld light. This is kind of a cheap, this is a Streamlight Polytac. I've had good experience with the Streamlight Polytacs in the past, and I don't really want to spend several $100s on other name brand lights. So I like the Polytac. And we talk about redundancies. So instead of wearing the Garmin Instinct, which is basically a mobile honing device, we could switch over to something like an analog watch. You can also use an analog watch if all of your compasses are broken. If you're in the middle of the day and you're lost, you can use an analog watch to figure out where north is, and that can help guide you where you need to go in different situations. Bug net for the face. When you're on watch at night, late at night, and the bugs are just going crazy, you don't want to get in the Charlie Sheen and Platoon type situation, you know, where it's pouring rain and his face is getting all eaten up by bugs and he can't focus, and he looks forward and there's already Vietnamese soldiers within 50 yards of him and his element. You don't want that to happen, right? You want to be able to have laser focus when you're on watch. Having a bug net can be very helpful in that situation. Hygiene kit. Now, when I break this down, I want you guys as grown men, you can make the decision on what you would carry for 24 hours versus what you would carry for 72 or extended periods of time. Me, when I was a private in the Army, I used to raw dog everything. No pun intended, right? So it's safe to say I spent a significant portion of my life as a retarded person. And what I mean by that is I would try to opt to save on weight by not carrying as much hygiene and just kind of suffering through the consequences of my actions. Now that I'm older, I'm not about that life, okay? You young guys can do that. I'm gonna not get gingivitis in the field. Emergency blanket. Now, hot weather environments can still require an emergency blanket, both for thermoregulation on casualties, or if, you know, a cold snap happens, or to help temporarily shield you from thermal devices like drones. Batteries for all of your implements. So I have batteries for every optic that I own right here, right? So since I use Aimpoint T2, since I use razors, they share the same battery. For things like my Comtacs and my little Petzls and stuff like that, you've got AAA batteries, and then you've got your CR123s for your night vision and whatnot for your buddies. I like to keep them in color-coded bags. These bags can be found like when you order screw sets and stuff like that from manufacturers, or you can hit up your local ketamine dealer and he's sure to have some little baggies like that. Redundancy right here. This is a wrist compass for when you are actively moving and you don't necessarily have time to stop and recheck your azimuth on your lensatic compass. You can double check that wrist compass every couple minutes to make sure that you're still in the rough azimuth before you conduct your tactical pause with your element to recheck your pace count and your azimuth. Small multi-tool. Again, this would preferably be transferred over to the body when we're doing actions on the objective or anything like that, small short duration patrols. This would probably go in my Spiritus fanny. And then this doesn't need too much explanation. 3 days worth of food. So a bunch of liquid IV hydration multipliers. Those can also help with getting rid of the taste of chemical purification. You will see that I have chemical purification in here. And then I've also got filter purification for water. Especially in the Southeast, I can roll another picture in of me drinking water in the Olympic rainforest in Washington that gave me giardia. So I was young and dumb. I found a babbling brook of water and I wanted to show off to my wife, and I drank a bunch of it and I got giardia, right? I've also gotten dysentery in Afghanistan. So sometimes it takes extra measures to purify your water, and certainly in the southeast where the water is disgusting, you're gonna need that. All right, so talking about the extra magazines from earlier, carrying them, you can carry them in stripper clips, you can do whatever you wanna do. In this case, I have them preloaded in 4 magazines, and I've got them in P-mags. I prefer not to stack the P-mags in the T-Rex arms rig unless I have to, because metal mags fit better in the T-Rex arms rig. And then you'll notice a theme, and it's that I use tons of waterproof bags. Now, inside this, I've got my little Orc Industries PCU level 4. Last night, it got down to 55 degrees, and I do want to apologize. I'm making a summer loadout video at the end of summer, which is kind of dumb, but yeah, it got down to 55 degrees. The whole summer, it's been like 80 degrees at night, and I was like, yeah, this is when we would need to start whipping out stuff like a thermal layer, right? Little wind shirt. Bags like this can be used to increase the buoyancy of your equipment. So you can tie them up, you can tape them up and have them filled with air so that they increase the buoyancy of your equipment in case you need to conduct water crossings, right? Because it's a non-permeable bag. That's a consideration for the southeastern United States that you folks out west probably don't have to handle. Water crossings is a reality here. So increasing the buoyancy of your equipment can be a smart way to move. Shelter item. So this is crazy. This is a Turkish poncho. It's gigantic. And I'm probably gonna swap back to an American multicam or OCP poncho just because they're lighter weight. Super thick material. This thing might as well be a tent, but it's reversible. So you've got the winter side, and then you've got green side, desert, slightly kind of arid, but you can tie it down in such a way as to prevent that white from showing. You could also just spray paint it real quick, and this can be a good layer for you to build off of your shelter if you're staying somewhere for an extended period of time and need to get your head out of the rain. Waterproof bag. Within this kind of harkens back to my discussion about raw dogging. All right, athlete's foot powder, medicated wet wipes, multiple. So one of these would be for weapons maintenance, right? And these other ones are for you to give yourself quick cat baths or wipe off lenses, stuff like that. But these microfiber towels, super helpful to have some sort of microfiber towel, even if it's just to help give you a cat bath to prevent yourself from falling to pieces because your skin will melt off in this kind of environment, right? The same thing applies to petroleum jelly. So this can be a salve for wounds. Also, when you get wet and you dry out, and you get wet and you dry out, it can shrivel up your skin and make it very sensitive and very dry, especially the lips. So a little bit of petroleum jelly could come in use. Also for the EPW stuff, if you get kinky like that. So wet weather bags, absolutely essential. Popping open the tri-zip all the way here, we've got our change of clothing. We're gonna have extra socks in here. I suggest 2 pairs of socks per day, right? So we're gonna have several extra pairs of socks, 1 extra pair of pants, 1 extra top as well, and a wet weather bag. And then a hammock. Now during the colder times of year, a hammock is not as essential. During the really hot months when you've got snakes and giant spiders, ticks, chiggers, everything under the sun, creepy crawling across the ground, having a hammock can be very helpful, especially if you're just LARPing in the woods with your friends. So this is the Grand Trunk Skeeter Beater. It comes with an integrated bug net, kind of a cheapo hammock. I've used it extensively. I'm not the biggest fan, but I don't want to go bankrupt, okay? Like seriously. So I'll probably upgrade this at some point when it becomes more of an issue, but as it stands, this is what I've got, all right? And then this is gonna cause some people to scratch their heads probably. All right, we've got our source bladder. This source bladder recently ruptured on me. I've had it for 3 years and it recently ruptured. Source bladders are super rock solid, awesome bladders. I want to try out the MSR dromedary bag soon to see if it's a little bit tougher, but this is where people are going to be like, huh? We've got an LBT 14 liter pack. Now I'll let you do the math on what you would and what you wouldn't take with you if things flexed into an assault or a short duration patrol. This is also their Faraday pack. So I'm not sure how convinced I am about Faraday devices, but you can put your phone or your GPS in here and hopefully prevent it from getting accessed by less than savory people. But the main thing behind this pack is that it flattens down really flat, and I can take it off and I can get rid of some of these comfort items, swap over to just the essentials, ammo, water, navigation, medical, right? And be able to flex into a more short duration role if, say, we have some sort of patrol base or something to leave our equipment at. This is my survival kit. This is my little miniature med kit. It comes with multiple things, antibiotics, antibiotic ointments, small fire starting implements, medical tape, something that can be pretty useful. Some of the stuff I have in here, if you've never been stung by nettles before, they're a real big problem here in the Southeast, and they can ruin your day. All right, stinging nettles. Imagine being bit by a fire ant. Well, if you've never gotten stinging nettles, you've never been bit by a fire ant. So imagine being poked by little needles over and over again and having alcohol poured into those little needle holes, and that's what nettles feel like. So you can use some tape to try to rip those nettles out of your skin, and then you can put the healing ointments over it to kind of get it going. Some Repel DEET. So I always recommend, in fact I demand, that you permethrin treat your clothing and then you double up with some DEET on the skin. I forgot to mention that in one of my last videos and made myself look like a big old dum-dum. Sheltering equipment. Here we've got a E-tool, and we've got about 100 feet of cord as well as some clippers to veg up our area. All right, so you want to take vegetation and conceal your area. If you're digging into a fighting position, bearing in mind from the context of a light infantryman, you may be digging into a fighting position. Sawyer squeeze mini filter. Okay, so this is kind of a last resort, suffocation, no breathing. So if you need to filter some water, I would suggest doing it from a multi-tiered system of maybe taking like your bug net and getting the larger sediments and particulates filtered through that or some sort of cloth, and then filtering it through here, and then finishing off with chemical filter, because these don't protect against viruses. The chemicals filter will finish it off, and then you can go ahead and drink that water safely and pop in some flavoring. And then we've got weapons maintenance equipment here. So we've got CLP, which I didn't even go over, but we've got CLP over there, so some lubricant. Got to have some hard ramrods in your equipment, some bore snakes, and some brushes, because it's not if you will get wet out here, it's how wet will you get. And I have had my weapon completely rust over top to bottom and become unusable. I also had a catastrophic failure of my M249 squad automatic weapon on Halloween of 2009 that almost got me killed. Not only was it embarrassing, but it was an extremely scary situation that could have been avoided if I would have carried my extra barrel on me or some sort of ramrod. And then finally, 10 sandbags. So, oh, and a flare. I've already explained before why I like flares. If you're assaulting an enemy location and you absolutely need your base of fire, your support by fire guys to know not to shoot you and to shift or lift their fire, You need something that's very visually easy to identify or auditory feedback, right? So if you can call over the radio and the shift, you know, the support by fire squad leader verifies that he's going to shift fire with you, more power to you. But if you are in an environment where you don't have access to radios, throwing out one of these flares and then waiting for confirmation, whatever way you've got it set up with them before you assault through, can save you a big headache. And then 10 sandbags, right? Should be self-explanatory, but infantrymen dig. Infantrymen do a lot of digging. And if you're conducting infantry operations, you too may need to dig. This also falls under the EPW idea, enemy prisoners of war. So if you're taking people prisoner or you are temporarily detaining people, you need to hide your identity. This is a GWAT classic, baby. All right, a little bit of tape, some sandbags, and some zip cuffs will handle a lot. So hopefully I've covered everything here today. Folks, if you've made it this far, I want to thank you so much. We're going to round off the video with a super quick announcement. I made an AK video recently that I have been disappointed in. All right, this was my first foray into the artistic endeavor that is YouTube, and me and my friends put a lot of work into that video. So if you don't care about AKs but you care about me, go check the video out. If you don't care about me but you care about AKs, go check the video out. And there's something special. We are conducting a raffle for one of the AKs contained in that video. It's valued at $2,500, and a large portion of those proceeds are going to a veterans charity to prevent veteran suicide, which, as someone who's lost multiple of my buddies, is very important to me. So check out the link below. Thank you so much for your support. If you made it this far, this is Sector 7. I'm out.